In a land facing an uncertain future, a prophet named Elijah confronted King Ahab with a dire prophecy for the entire kingdom. Elijah declared to King Ahab that there would be no dew or rain for years, only by his own spoken word. Soon after, a divine voice instructed Elijah to depart, hide by the eastern brook Cherith, near the Jordan. He was told to drink from the brook, for ravens had been commanded to bring him bread and meat there. Elijah obeyed, journeying to live by the brook Cherith, finding solitude as commanded. Each morning and evening, ravens brought him bread and meat, and he drank fresh water from the flowing brook. However, as the drought intensified across the land, the brook Cherith eventually dried completely. A divine voice then directed Elijah to travel to Zarephath, where a widow would sustain him. Arriving at Zarephath's city gate, Elijah found a widow gathering sticks and asked her for water. As she turned to fetch the water, Elijah made another request, a small morsel of bread. She revealed only a handful of meal and oil remained, enough for one last meal for her and her son before they died. Elijah urged her not to fear, instructing her to bake him a small cake first, then food for herself and her son. He promised that the jar of meal and oil would not run out until rain returned to the earth. The widow obeyed Elijah's words, and for many days, she, her son, and Elijah had food to eat. Indeed, the jar of meal and the jar of oil never ran dry, just as Elijah had prophesied. Later, the widow's son fell gravely ill and tragically stopped breathing, his life extinguished. Grief-stricken, the widow confronted Elijah, accusing him of recalling her sin and causing her son's death. Elijah gently took the boy from her arms, carried him upstairs to his room, and laid him on his own bed. Elijah cried out to the divine, questioning why this evil had befallen the widow he was staying with. 3 times, Elijah stretched himself upon the child, fervently pleading for the boy's life to return. The divine heard Elijah's prayer, the child's soul returned, and the boy suddenly revived. Elijah brought the living boy downstairs and joyfully presented him to his mother, declaring, "Your son lives." Overwhelmed, the woman proclaimed she now knew Elijah was a true man of God, speaking divine truth. After many days, in the 3rd year of drought, Elijah received a divine command to finally confront King Ahab. Elijah set out to meet Ahab, as the famine in Samaria had become utterly severe. Meanwhile, King Ahab summoned his loyal household manager, Obadiah, who had secretly hidden prophets from the Queen's purge. Ahab instructed Obadiah to search the entire parched land for water and grass to save their remaining animals. The 2 men divided the territory, each setting off alone to search for vital sustenance. As Obadiah journeyed, he suddenly encountered Elijah, recognizing him immediately and falling to the ground in reverence. Elijah confirmed his identity and commanded Obadiah to tell King Ahab that he was present. Obadiah pleaded, fearing Elijah would vanish and Ahab would kill him for failing to deliver the prophet. Elijah solemnly swore that he would indeed present himself to Ahab that very day. Relieved, Obadiah went to tell Ahab, and soon the king himself came to meet Elijah. Upon seeing Elijah, Ahab immediately confronted him, calling him the troubler of Israel. Elijah retorted that Ahab, not he, had troubled Israel by forsaking divine commandments and following other gods. Elijah then commanded Ahab to gather all Israel, along with hundreds of Baal and Asherah prophets, on Mount Carmel. Ahab sent messengers throughout Israel, summoning all the people and the prophets to Mount Carmel. Elijah challenged the gathered crowd, asking how long they would waver between 2 paths, but they remained silent. He declared himself the only remaining divine prophet, facing 450 prophets of Baal. Elijah proposed a test. 2 bulls, 2 altars, each prepared with wood, but no fire underneath. The challenge, the God who answers by fire, would be proven true. The people agreed it was good. Elijah instructed Baal's numerous prophets to choose their bull, prepare it first, and call upon their God's name. Baal's prophets prepared their bull, then cried out to Baal from morning till noon, leaping around their altar, but received no answer. At noon, Elijah mocked them, suggesting Baal might be deep in thought, on a journey, or asleep, and needed waking. They then cried even louder, cutting themselves with knives and lances until blood flowed freely. They continued their fervent rituals until evening, but still, no voice, no answer, and no one paid attention. Elijah then called all the people near, and they gathered as he began repairing a dilapidated divine altar. He used 12 stones, symbolizing the tribes of Jacob, to reconstruct the altar in the divine name. After building the altar, he dug a trench around it, wide enough to hold a significant amount of water. He arranged the wood, placed the cut bull on it, then ordered 4 jars of water poured over the offering in wood. Elijah commanded them to repeat the drenching 2 more times, saturating the offering and wood. Water flowed around the altar, filling the surrounding trench completely. At evening, Elijah prayed, asking the divine to reveal himself as God in Israel and turn the people's hearts back. Instantly, fire descended from above, consuming the offering, wood, stones, and even licking up all the water in the trench. Seeing this, all the people fell to their faces, crying out, "The divine, he is God. The divine, he is God." Elijah ordered the people to seize Baal's prophets. They were captured, brought to Brook Kishon, and executed there. Elijah told Ahab to eat and drink, for he heard the distinct sound of approaching, abundant rain. Ahab went to eat, while Elijah climbed to Mount Carmel's peak, bowing low with his face between his knees. Elijah sent his servant to look towards the sea 7 times, but each time the servant reported seeing nothing. On the 7th try, a small hand-sized cloud appeared. Elijah warned Ahab to descend before heavy rain stopped him. Soon, the sky darkened with clouds and wind, and a great rain poured down as Ahab rode swiftly to Jezreel. Empowered, Elijah tucked in his cloak and ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to Jezreel's entrance. King Ahab told Queen Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the killing of all her prophets. Jezebel, enraged, sent Elijah a death threat, vowing to make his life like her slain prophets by tomorrow. Fearing for his life, Elijah fled, running to Beersheba in Judah, leaving his servant there. He continued a day's journey into the wilderness, collapsing under a juniper tree, wishing for death. As he slept, an angel touched him, instructing him to arise and eat. Elijah awoke to find a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. He ate, drank, and slept once more. A divine angel touched him again, urging him to arise and eat, for the journey ahead was too great. Strengthened by the food, Elijah journeyed 40 days and nights, reaching Horeb, the mountain of God. At Horeb, he camped in a cave, where a divine voice questioned him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah lamented that Israel had forsaken the covenant, destroyed altars, killed prophets, and now sought his life. He stood on the mountain. A mighty wind tore rocks. Then an earthquake shook the ground, but the divine was not there. Then fire passed, but the divine was not in it. Finally, a still small voice was heard. Elijah wrapped his face in his cloak, stood at the cave's entrance, and again heard the question, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah repeated his lament. Israel had forsaken the covenant, killed prophets, and now sought his life. He received new instructions: anoint 2 kings and Elisha as his successor, for 7,000 loyal people remained. Elijah departed and found Elisha plowing with oxen. He approached and placed his mantle upon him. Elisha left his oxen, ran after Elijah, and asked to bid his parents farewell before following him. Elisha sacrificed his oxen for a communal feast, then committed fully, following and serving Elijah.